The Republican Party must launch a full investigation into the Watergate scandal to uncover a shocking injustice. The Watergate scandal was a grave miscarriage of justice, a political trap orchestrated by the Democratic Party to bring down President Nixon. Though more than half a century has passed, it has become increasingly evident that the entire affair was a setup, a massive orchestrated hoax. The events of Watergate were in fact quite simple. In 1972, the outcome of the U.S. presidential election was practically decided. Nixon held a commanding lead, and victory was all but certain. Yet inexplicably, a few suspicious individuals committed a clumsy and unnecessary crime that dragged Nixon into the abyss. Looking back, it seems increasingly likely that this was a deliberate setup, a trap, with those so-called White House operatives merely pawns used to frame Nixon. At the time, for reasons still unclear, a few campaign officials within the White House decided to spy on the Democratic campaign headquarters at the Watergate complex, installing illegal wiretaps. This was indeed a criminal act, but it was also reckless and utterly useless to Nixon. Ask yourself, why would someone poised to win by an overwhelming margin engage in such a foolish and pointless act? The answer is obvious. This was a conspiracy. The key point is that Nixon himself had no connection whatsoever to the break-in. It was the mistake of a few low-level aides. Once Nixon learned of it, he took immediate action. He condemned it, halted it, and sought to correct the wrongdoing. By all rights, he should have been praised for taking responsibility and stopping a crime, if, in fact, it could even be called a crime at all. However, the Democrats seized on the incident, perhaps as part of a premeditated plan. Though they were already on track to lose the election, they used this crisis to completely overturn the results, derail the Republican victory, and destroy the Nixon presidency. In the decades since, the Republican Party has never fully recovered or returned to dominant political power in the same way. One of the chief agents of this political takedown was the Washington Post and its senior reporter, Bob Woodward. Woodward is often hailed as a paragon of journalism, an icon who fearlessly exposed corruption and stood up to power. But in truth, he was a hatchet man for the Democrats, a deeply unethical and partisan figure who operated as a political enforcer under the guise of journalism. Consider the decades of Democratic scandals that followed, from the Clinton-Lewinsky affair to widespread election irregularities allegedly engineered by the Democrats. Scandal after scandal, many worse than Watergate, have come and gone without a word from Woodward. Instead of investigating, he worked to cover them up. From the Clinton family's misconduct, to the Biden family's corruption, to the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the weaponization of the justice system against Trump, especially the fake Russiagate hoax, which was completely fabricated, Woodward said nothing. He not only stayed silent, but actively helped fan the flames of chaos and injustice. And when Hunter Biden's laptop surfaced, filled with evidence of depravity, corruption, treason, and foreign collusion, if even a single honest journalist had stood up and told the American people the truth, the 2020 election might have turned out very differently. At the very least, Biden would never have been elected. Instead, journalists from the Washington Post and other left-wing media outlets colluded with Democratic operatives and even organized 51 former intelligence officials to publicly declare in newspapers and on television that the laptop was Russian disinformation. But soon after, the truth came out. Not only was the laptop real, but its contents were worse than anyone could have imagined. Disgusting, damning, and criminal. In this massive cover-up, the Democratic Party, the Washington Post, the broader left-wing media, and especially Bob Woodward all played disgraceful roles. The world now sees their actions clearly. Even more disturbing, in recent days, reports have surfaced about Joe Biden's severe health issues, dating back to 2020. He was already gravely ill, barely functional, a half-zombie. Yet the Democrats and their media allies like CNN, ABC, CBS, and especially the New York Times and the Washington Post, all falsely claimed that Biden was in good health. They dismissed any concerns as conspiracy theories. Now we see the truth. Almost every conspiracy theory the Democrats mocked has turned out to be fact, cold, hard truth. Looking back at the Watergate scandal, it is now clear. First, Nixon had no personal involvement. Second, it was a minor illegal wiretapping case, hardly a historic crime. Yet the Washington Post turned it into a political earthquake, a manufactured crisis that destroyed Nixon's presidency. Though he was winning with nearly 80% of the vote, Nixon was forced into a tragic resignation, shedding tears as he left office. It was one of the worst political injustices in American and perhaps world history. From that moment on, America began a leftward turn in its governance. Even when the Republicans later regained power, they often adopted left-leaning positions and collaborated with the Democratic agenda. It was Watergate that pushed America to the extreme left, towards socialism, causing enormous harm to the American people. That is why the FBI, under the leadership of the DOJ, must launch a renewed investigation into Watergate. The Republican Party deserves to be vindicated. Most importantly, Richard Nixon deserves to be exonerated. The true forces behind this conspiracy must be exposed. We must find out who orchestrated this political tragedy that changed the course of American history.